Worldviews by N.T. Wright on Udemy. Here we go. Tom Wright starts the discussion on worldviews and says worldviews are like a pair of spectacles, a pair of glasses that we look through, not at. They shape how we see the world, and they quite often get seen as a way of saying this is just the way things are. And this is a statement that indicates a worldview, a certain picture of the world that we take for granted. And every culture has that. And they come together around these four aspects. One is a story. What is the story a culture or a worldview is telling of itself? Where did we come from? Where are we currently? It's a set of symbols, key activities, key indications that are simply there in a culture. It's a set of practices, what you do as a way of reinforcing symbols and stories, and it's a set of questions, especially the questions: who are we? Where are we? What is wrong? What is the solution? And what time it is? It might sound a bit abstract, but as we go through it, we might get a better view on it. So the Tom Wright starts with an analysis of the British worldview. And he says one of the key stories in the British self-understanding is the Magna Carta, the legal agreement that the king is under the law. So the law is higher than the monarchy. And out of that, one of the key symbols in the UK is the Parliament. And there's a constant tension between monarchy and Parliament on how that plays out, and this tension between tradition and the modern world, between kingship and democracy is constantly seen in the British life. And the British life has the praxis, one of the praxis being the Union Jack, dedicated to the nation, but also a sense of irony, being proud and self-distant, joking about yourself, about others, and not taking yourself as the highest thing ever. So who are we? We are the British. Where are we? Well, we're offshore, certainly not in Europe. We're our own island. We're our own sort of way of running things. What's wrong? Poverty is one of the problems that is seen as wrong. And we understood through our history and the way we struggle with things, a long history, that there's no quick fixes. And the solution is to escape / to not let any tyrannies rule the world. This is one way the British can think of themselves and look at the world and hence interpret things going on. Tom then goes to the Roman worldview, the ancient world, and asks how did they view the world? And one of the big stories of the Roman worldview was that peace and prosperity would spread throughout the world through Roman rule. Octavian and others, they had decisive victories that enabled the known world to live in a sense of peace and prosperity that was not seen as of yet. Hence, the symbols or statues of rulers mainly, but also other statues of philosophers that underscored that peace and prosperity is spread throughout the empire. It was the roads and taxes as a way of transporting the peace and prosperity, of organizing the world and to lift the life standard of everything. And it was the theater, the place of debate, the place of enjoyment, the place where Roman superiority could be celebrated in various aspects. The key practices was the army. So whenever there was any problem, you sent in the army and you dealt with it. And it was the social hierarchy that was in place, with the Senate and especially Caesar at the top, and then various layers, and the slaves at the very bottom. The questions in the Roman worldview: who are we? Well, we are the Romans. Where are we? We're across the entire known world. What's wrong? Wrong is obviously always the rebellion, people who try to disturb the harmony and order of the society. The solution is to send in the army. And what time is well, we're living in a time of a new age of peace and prosperity spreading through the world. So this drove the Roman activities and the Roman ambitions, and into this world Paul came. The Jewish worldview of the time What did the Jews believe of themselves? Well, they believed themselves to be of ancestry of Abraham, and Abraham was called to bless the world. They were seen as the people of the Exodus, who were led by God out of oppression and into a promised land. They were a people of the land of promise, but somehow found themselves in exile. Even though they lived in their land again, somehow they were still under oppression, still under foreign rule. And the story of the Jewish worldview very much remained open and called for an ending to come. The symbols of the Jews were the temple, the place where heaven and earth met, the Torah, the place where you became wisdom and became guidance from God, and that marked you out as the people of God, and the land of the place of promise, where God would act for his people, where prosperity and peace would come and spread then out throughout all the world. And the key practices were very much about purity, sacrifice, sacrifice to become pure, purity of the heart, dedication and seal. The practice was around the Passam festival, celebrating the Exodus that was and that is to come, and how God will act for his people, and obviously the observance of Sabbath, keeping the day holy and looking forward to the time when God will dwell with his people and they will be united. So who are we? We're the chosen people. Where are we? In exile, unfortunately. What's wrong? Foreign rulers and the impurity of their own people, not taking God seriously enough, not somehow allowing him to come to dwell with his people. The solution is zeal and purity, preparing yourself for God, working for God, having zeal, and the time is a time of waiting and anticipating God's great act. And with this, we see the Apostle Paul coming, the in-Messiah shift, as Tom calls it. And he picks up this two letters that were written, one from Pliny to a friend called Sabianus, about a runaway slave. And Pliny basically tells Sabianus to have mercy on the slave and to return him to the pecking order. And out of this letter, we have very much the status quo, the Roman worldview reinstated. The mercy of Pliny was that he didn't kill the slave, but that he let him return to the way things were. And at around the same time, Paul wrote a letter to a friend called Philemon about a runaway slave called Onesimus. And interestingly enough, he has a different set of expectation to his friend Philemus, and this was to embrace the slave as family. He asks him, he calls him a partner in the gospel, he calls him as family, and we should embrace him just as Philemon should embrace Paul himself. So there's a shift happening that's in the Messiah, different worldview coming through. And this was the worldview of Paul, or of the Messiah shift. And the story was very much about fulfillment. There was a time, there was an open question for an open ending, and now it happened. Time is fulfilled. And how is it fulfilled? It's fulfilled in the resurrection of Jesus, a new life, a new day dawning, and a new life coming. Inaugurated eschatology, the end has come into the present, and the times have been fulfilled. What are the key symbols of this worldview? The unity and holiness of the church, of a fellowship of believers, of humans living as family together. And it's a rearranging of the social order into family, and a redefinition of leadership around being a servant. God himself became the servant king, and out of this we have a new symbol of rulership. What is the praxis? The praxis is the renewed humanity, individuals who get their lives cleansed, renewed, empowered by God, and live in a different plane. And certainly the praxis of reconciliation, of people forgiving each other, of seeking unity, of honoring each other, and of living in this fellowship. So who are we? We are in the Messiah. We are the renewed people. Where are we? We are in God's creation on the earth, and specifically in God's part of God's new creation. What's wrong? Well, the world is infected by sin, so it suffers and is out of joint. Caesar is a signifier of that worldly power structure of running things that is out of joint, and old humanity is the problem. Humanity that's not empowered, humanity that's not reconciled with God or with each other. What's the solution? It's to preach the gospel. It's to remain in prayer and to live this new life. And what time it is time for new creation. And now let's compare this Christian worldview with the worldview of the 21st century. And here we have the story of progress coming out of the Enlightenment discovering scientific laws and following them, improving how things are run, told a story of social and economic and progress. The world will get better, and the more we spread democracy around the world, the more we solve things through scientific and human reasoning, we will get better. However, over the last decades, we sort of ran out of steam. We realized in the 21st century there was an enormous amount of killing, of wars. 9/11 showed the confrontation of our worldview of improvement with a different worldview, and the towers crashed and sort of drove home the point that real progress is really difficult to achieve and to sustain in a world with competing worldviews. And one of the pictures Tom highlights from various ratings and philosophies is being the captain of our own soul. We took matters in our own hand, and self-fulfillment and steering wherever we want to go, captaining our own boat is very much in the center. What are the symbols of our modern worldview? Very much money and everything associated with it: prestige, glitter, influence, esteem. This is very, very key. Then he has this interesting notion of compound interest as a key symbol. So the thing about compound interest, it doesn't follow a goal anymore, rather than simply increasing in value, increasing in influence, rather than using that influence particularly for anything good or stating that at the outcome it's progressive, just feeding of itself. Money becomes its own reward. And then the whole idea of nations drawing national boundaries, which was very uncommon in an ancient world where people roamed around at various places. We draw maps on the world and then expect everybody to align with our maps. And one of the key conflicts of our times is also the non-acceptance of those lines and the enforcement of lines around the world. So what are some of the key practices? Shopping. Shopping is an expression of this captaining our own soul. Tesco ergo sum, I shop, therefore I am, is a mantra that sort of reinforces our modern worldview of progress, of power, of influence, and of self-fulfillment. We travel at an unprecedented rate. We want to see the world. We want to enjoy its merits, and finally a practice of imposing our values, thinking that democracy should spread all around the world. Also our franchises and the way to build, and certain philosophy and assumptions that we really believe everybody who's of grown age should really have. So who are we? We are intelligent, well-educated people. Where are we? Unfortunately, in a changing world. We would like it only to be stable and progress, change in our direction, but sometimes it's changing in a way we don't want, with climate change and with militant Islam coming along. What's wrong? Certainly totalitarian systems. Anybody who claims power that has the claim above our worldview is a problem for us. Solution is our values being spread mainly through education, but also through business and the media. This is something we very much work at, to teach the world that our values are superior. And what time is it? Unfortunately, uncertain times. Hopefully again soon, times for progress. And with that, we come to the conclusion of the course on worldviews. Hope you enjoyed it.